to Twilight Fables, where shadows whisper, fairy tales curdle into nightmares, and the past will not rest quietly. Tonight, we open the lid on a story of obsession, inheritance, and the price of desire, the tale of the glass coffin. Listen closely, for the collector has unlocked a secret he should never have touched. The village knew him only as the collector. He was not an old man, though the years clung to him heavily, weighing down his shoulders and paling his eyes. He had been born there, lived among them, and yet seemed always apart. When his wife died in childbirth, leaving him only with a daughter in her place, his withdrawal deepened. He still went to market, still nodded to his neighbours, still paid his dues to the church, but his gaze was always on things that were not people. Where another man might have poured his grief into drink or hard labour, the collector poured his into objects, trinkets, oddities, scraps of history no one else cared for. A broken pocket watch with a bird engraved on its back, a shard of stained glass taken from a crumbling chapel, a string of beads once worn by a nun who went mad and wandered into the river. His home became crowded with these strange treasures, dusty shelves sagging under the weight of relics. His daughter, Elspeth, grew among these silent companions. She learned not to touch, not to breathe too loudly in the rooms crowded with glass jars, stones, bones and books. She loved her father, though she knew he loved his objects more. Still, he was kind in his distant way, feeding her, clothing her, teaching her to read when other girls were only taught to stitch. She spent her days with the trinkets, whispering her own stories to them, since her father rarely spoke. It might have gone on this way forever, the collector bound to his curiosities, his daughter living in their shadow, had it not been for the journey he made one late autumn. The forest was thick with fog when he wandered deeper than usual. He claimed he was following a rumour of a hermit who lived beyond the hills, a man who kept charms that could ward off sickness. But in truth, the collector often walked simply to seek, to see what the world might leave lying in its forgotten corners. He walked as though the earth itself might yield up its secrets to him if he just kept looking. That day, the fog parted to reveal a hollow, and in that hollow stood a chest, an iron chest, heavy and sealed with rust. No one could say how it had come to be there. The collector's pulse quickened the moment he saw it. He felt the prickling on the back of his neck that always came before a discovery, as if fate itself had guided his steps. Dragging it home took all his strength. He spent days prying at the lock, his hands blistering, his body sore. Elspeth watched, worried, as he muttered and sweated in his workshop. When at last the lock cracked, the lid shuddered open, and within lay a coffin. It was made of glass, clear as water, seamless, flawless, and inside the coffin lay a woman, her hair dark as midnight, was spread about her like spilled ink. Her skin was pale but perfect, her lips faintly red as though blood still lingered there. She was dressed in white, a simple gown without adornment. Her hands were folded over her chest. Her eyes were closed, but her lashes were long and delicate, casting shadows across her cheeks. She looked not dead, but asleep. The collector's breath caught. He had seen many strange things, but never had he seen beauty made eternal in this way. It pierced him, a blade through the ribs. He touched the glass, and though it was cold, he felt a warmth inside him he had not known for decades. Elspeth, standing in the doorway, whispered, "Father, is she dead?" The collector shushed her sharply, never taking his eyes from the maiden. "She is preserved." He could not sleep that night. The maiden haunted his mind. The house seemed alive with her presence. He dreamed of her rising from the coffin, smiling, her hand slipping into his. He dreamed of her lips parting, of her voice like bells in the dark. When he woke, sweat dampened his brow, and yet he felt more alive than he had in years. Days turned to weeks, and the collector's obsession grew. He sat by the coffin each evening, speaking softly as though she could hear. He told her of his life, of the relics he had gathered, of his loneliness. He confessed his sorrow at losing his wife, his bewilderment at raising Elspeth alone. He whispered things he had never told another living soul, and though she never moved, never stirred, he felt she listened. He felt her eyes flutter just beneath their lids. Elspeth grew uneasy. She would find him asleep beside the glass, his hand resting on it like a lover's hand upon a cheek. She would find food untouched, work neglected, his temper sharper than before. "Father," she said one evening, her small hands clutching the doorway. "She frightens me." He turned on her, eyes blazing. "Do not speak of her that way. She is a miracle. She is more than you can understand." Elspeth shrank back. She wanted to ask, "And am I not enough for you?" But she knew better than to speak it. The whispers began in December. At first, he thought they were dreams, the echo of his own desires, a soft voice, like the faint crack of ice thawing, whispering, "Free me." He woke in the dark, his heart hammering, his eyes searching the coffin. The maiden's lips were still, yet the sound lingered, curling around him like smoke. "Free me, and I will love you. Free me, and I will be yours." He knew then the coffin had a bargain. He felt it in his bones. The maiden could not rise unless another took her place. The balance must be kept, and once he understood, the voice grew stronger, clearer. Choose someone to sleep in my stead, and I will awaken. You were meant to find me. You were chosen." The collector wrestled with himself. He told no one, not even Elspeth, though she began to sense the tension in his frame. the madness sharpening his eyes. He stared at her sometimes too long, then shook himself and turned away. He tried to reason with the voice, to ask for another way, but the answer was always the same. Another must take my place, another must lie in the glass. Winter deepened, snow covered the fields. The collector grew gaunt, his cheeks hollow, his skin sallow, as though the coffin drew life from him, even as it promised to give it. Yet he could not resist. Each night he lingered by the glass. Each day he thought only of her. He imagined her walking beside him through the village. He imagined her hand in his, her laughter, her warmth in his bed. He convinced himself that she had been waiting only for him, that her stillness was faithfulness, her silence devotion. And when his gaze fell upon his daughter, sleeping peacefully in her bed, the thought came, unbidden and vile, she is young, she will not suffer, she will sleep forever, beautiful, unchanging, and the maiden will awaken, both will be preserved, both will be mine. He tried to banish it, but the coffin whispered louder, filling his dreams and his waking thoughts alike. One must sleep for another to wake. Choose, choose. The collector was no longer a man, but a shadow of desire, hollowed out and filled with the glass coffin's call. He began to see his daughter not as his child, but as a vessel, a solution. When she laughed, he thought of how her face would look behind the glass, stilled forever. When she sang to herself, he thought of the silence she would give the maiden. He told himself it was mercy. He told himself it was destiny. And in the lonely winter nights, he began to prepare. The coffin gleamed even in darkness. By the firelight, it shimmered faintly, as though the glass drank in flame and moon alike. The collector sat before it, night after night, lips cracked, eyes hollow, whispering his devotion to the maiden within. Elsbeth watched from the shadows. She had grown weary of asking questions. Her father snapped now, his voice carrying a heat that frightened her. But she saw how the coffin consumed him, how the house grew colder, how meals were forgotten, and the windows remained shuttered against the world. At times, she tried to draw him back. She placed flowers by his chair, sang the little lullabies her mother had once hummed. He barely noticed. His gaze was always on the coffin, on the woman who never moved, never breathed. It was as though the maiden's stillness had stolen the collector's soul. The whispers deepened. She waits for you. She loves you. She only needs your choice. He began to believe them. He began to speak back, murmuring, I would give anything, anything for her smile, her touch, anything for her to walk beside me. And the answer always came, then give me another. The coffin does not lie empty. A life for a life, a sleeper for a sleeper. At first, he thought to bring some animal, a stray dog, a goat from the field, but when he laid his hands on them, The coffin rejected them. The glass grew icy, cracking faintly under his palms, a warning. No, the voice said, not beasts, not vermin, only the pure may lie within, only the innocent may feed the glass. The collector's eyes drifted, inevitably, toward his daughter. Elsbeth was 12. She slept with a doll clutched to her chest, her breaths soft and even. Sometimes she dreamed, whispering nonsense words, and he would stand in the doorway listening. The thought came more often now. How beautiful she looked in sleep, how peaceful. She will never know fear, the voice coaxed. She will never know loss or age. She will sleep forever, preserved, untouched. Would you not give her such a gift? He told himself this was not murder. It was a trade, a transference. His daughter would not suffer. She would simply rest. And the maiden would awaken, warm and alive, to love him as he deserved. That was how he reasoned it. That was how he kept his trembling hand steady. The preparations began in secret. He cleared a path to the coffin, sweeping the dust, arranging candles in a circle. He whispered the phrases that came to him in dreams, words older than his tongue should have known. The air grew heavy when he spoke them, but he felt power coiling in the room, responding to his devotion. At night, he hovered by Elsbeth's bed. He would brush her hair back from her forehead, his hand shaking. She stirred sometimes, murmuring, "Papa," in her sleep, and he would retreat, heart pounding. But the coffin called him back. He stopped going to market, stopped greeting the neighbours, stopped answering when Elsbeth asked if he was well. He was not well. He was chosen. He believed this with a fever that burned his veins. The night came when he could no longer wait. Snow pressed against the shutters, muffling the world. The house lay hushed, fire dying low in the hearth. Elsbeth slept soundly, her doll pressed to her chest, her curls tangled across the pillow. The collector moved like a shadow. He lit the candles around the coffin, their flames flickering weakly. He whispered the words, and the glass shimmered, veins of pale light racing across it like frost. He stepped into his daughter's room. His hands trembled as he reached down, but he forced them steady, forced his breath to calm. He gathered her into his arms, the weight small, fragile, warm. She stirred, her lips parting. "Papa?" "Hush, my dove," he whispered, kissing her hair. His voice cracked. "Only sleep, only sleep." She settled again, trusting him, curling against his chest. Every step toward the coffin was a hammer blow in his skull. His heart pounded, his knees shook. He told himself again and again, "This is mercy, this is love, this is destiny." The maiden seemed to glow within the glass, her lips redder, her skin flushed faintly as though she already tasted life. The coffin hummed, faint and hungry. The collector lowered his daughter beside it. The glass rippled like water, opening with a sound like breath. Cold air spilled forth, damp and sharp. He laid Elsbeth inside. For one brief, terrible instant, Her eyes fluttered open. She looked at him, not in fear, but in confusion. "Papa," she whispered. Tears burned his eyes. He forced a smile, though his heart shattered. "Rest, my love, just rest." The glass sealed shut. The sound was final, like the closing of a tomb. Elsbeth's lips parted in a soft sigh. Frost traced across the glass, her breath fading, her small hands stilled. Her doll slipped from her grasp. The coffin glowed. The maiden stirred. The collector fell to his knees, sobbing with joy and grief as the figure within began to awaken. The house was silent, except for the flicker of candles and the sound of the collector's ragged breathing. The glass coffin pulsed faintly, veins of light threading across its surface like cracks in ice. Inside, the maiden's chest rose, shallow, trembling, then fell again. Breath for the first time in centuries. The collector staggered to his feet. His tears ran unchecked. His face twisted in awe. "You live," he whispered hoarsely. "You live for me." Her eyes opened. They were not soft eyes, not the gentle blue or warm brown he had imagined. They were pale, almost colourless, as though made of glass themselves. They reflected everything, the flickering candles, the trembling man before her, but revealed nothing of her own. Still, the collector gasped, entranced. He pressed his palms to the coffin. At last, you are mine." The maiden's lips parted. A sound issued forth, faint, like the hiss of wind through reeds. Not quite a word, but it carried weight all the same. Hunger. The collector barely heard. His whole body shook with longing. "I have given you all. I have given you my daughter, my heart, my life. Rise, beloved, rise and be mine." The glass shivered with a sound like splintering ice. The coffin opened. The maiden stepped out. She moved stiffly, as though unused to the act, but with every step her grace returned. Her gown clung to her like mist. Her hair spilled across her shoulders. Her skin gleamed faintly, as though light lay beneath it. The collector fell to his knees, overcome. "You are more beautiful than I ever dreamed." Her gaze turned to him. For a heartbeat, he believed she smiled. His chest swelled, joy threatening to break him apart. Then her eyes slid past him, to the coffin. Within lay Elsbeth, small, still, her face pale, her breath gone, her body already sinking into the glass, merging with it as though swallowed whole. The maiden's smile widened. One sleeps, another wakes. The collector followed her gaze, and for the first time, hesitation pierced his fever. His daughter's doll lay on the floor beside the coffin, its wooden face staring up blankly. Her tiny hand was pressed against the glass, as if reaching for him even in her last moment. His throat tightened, a sob racked him, but the maiden reached down, touching his cheek. Her hand was cold, so cold it burned, yet he leaned into it, weeping with devotion. "You are mine," he whispered. "Say it, say you are mine." Her lips brushed his ear. Her breath was frost. "You are mine." The days that followed blurred. The maiden did not eat, nor sleep, nor speak much beyond fragments. Yet she filled the house with her presence, pacing its halls, her glass-like eyes watching all. The collector followed her, enraptured, serving her as though she were a queen. But the house was not as it had been. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, mirrors fogged without cause. The air was heavy with a silence that pressed against the ears, and at night, when the collector lay beside her, he dreamed of glass, of Elspeth's face staring out from the coffin, her lips moving soundlessly. Sometimes he swore he could hear her voice. "Papa, please, Papa, wake me." He would jolt upright, gasping, only to find the maiden beside him, her pale eyes unblinking, watching him in the dark. One evening, he ventured into the room where the coffin stood. He had avoided it, preferring the living warmth of the maiden's company, but the pull was too strong. The coffin no longer gleamed. Its surface was murky, clouded, as though filled with smoke. Yet when he drew closer, he saw shapes within. Elspeth, his daughter, but not as she had been. Her hair floated weightless, her eyes open, her lips pressed against the glass in a silent scream. Her doll drifted beside her, wood-splitting, its painted eyes gone black. "Forgive me," the collector whispered, hands trembling on the glass. "It was for love. It was for us." The surface rippled. His reflection stared back, gaunt, sunken, hollow-eyed. Yet when he leaned closer, he saw more. Behind his reflection was another image, himself, lying in the coffin. He stumbled back, gasping. The whispers curled around him, cruel now, sharp. One sleeps, another wakes. The bargain is never done. The coffin always hungers. The maiden's hand settled on his shoulder. He flinched, but turned, desperate for comfort. Her eyes glowed faintly, catching the candlelight like fractured crystal. Her smile was wide, too wide. Her teeth faintly pointed behind her lips. "You are mine," she whispered again. But this time it was not devotion, it was promise. Her fingers dug into his flesh, ice searing his skin. He cried out, but her grip only tightened, and in the coffin, his daughter's face pressed harder against the glass, her eyes wide with terror, her mouth shaping words he could not hear. The collector realized then, the truth too late. He had not freed the maiden, he had freed the coffin's hunger. The glass did not preserve out of kindness, it preserved out of need, a prison and a mouth both. The maiden was not a woman, but its vessel, its avatar. She had no love to give, only hunger to feed. And now, as her hand dragged him down, he saw his fate reflected clear, the coffin waiting, the glass yawning wide, his daughter reaching for him, forever beyond his grasp. his own face pressed against the glass, eyes wide, lips frozen in a silent plea. When the villagers spoke of the collector in years to come, they said only that he vanished. His house was found abandoned, dust thick on the shelves, mirrors shattered, candle melted to pools, and in the centre of one room stood a coffin of glass. Within lay two figures, a man and a girl, their faces pale, their eyes open, their hands pressed to the glass as if reaching for one another. Beside them, a maiden sat upright, her pale eyes unblinking, her smile sharp as shards, waiting, always waiting.